leads into my next story. Again, I'm not going to talk about temples, but I am going to talk about something being built. Now, this is a story I've been following for a while. It's been going on for about a month. I'd like to thank all the people that email me little updates on this. I was kind of waiting for something to kind of come to a little more of a conclusion before I podcasted about it here. But this is about a seminary building in Arizona that is being built on school district property. So if we can roll this little video, this kind of gives us some background, and then I'll do a little update on what has just happened in this last week.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Pat Paris. Heidi has the evening off. We recently shared a story about the Vail School Board allowing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to build a seminary building on the Cienega High School campus. Dozens of community members continue to express their concerns over the plan. They say they're worried about the separation of church and state with the seminary being built on campus. Others advocating for the benefits to students who are part of the LDS Church.
And I have to wake up at 5 a.m. every morning to go to seminary, and it's super tiring.
Now, in the Vail School District saying it's the student's choice to participate.
And we're not forcing anyone to participate. It's just being made available to students with those beliefs.
Continuing coverage now on the plans approved by the Vail School Board last week. Some say it violates the Constitution, while others are excited for what this might do for the community. KGUN9's Raina Preciado breaks down both sides for us.
The separation of church and state is the focus of this cease and desist letter written to Vail Unified School District after it was unanimously approved by the school board to build an LDS seminary on one of the campuses. A flood of concerns on social media starting the conversation about these plans set to be complete by January 2026 at Cienega High School. Now a statewide organization is taking action with this letter to VUSD saying it violates the state and federal constitutions by allowing religion to be taught on campus.
You may not have a public school favoring a particular religion.
Diane Post says she's had 5 different people reach out to her with concerns. VUSD's superintendent says it won't affect anyone who won't use the space.
We serve 15,000 students. We have 23 different schools. We have 2 million square feet of space in our school district. And we're talking about adding a classroom and some storage space.
Students and parents KGUN9 spoke to in support of these plans say it would remove a 30-minute one-way commute to the nearest seminary, where students take religious classes in place of an elective. The school district says it's following the law, defending the decision they say will not come at any cost to taxpayers.
It is simply intended to serve those children who are in our schools already and their families, and do so in a way that doesn't impact anybody else, that there's appropriate separation.
Reporting in Vail, Raina Preciado, KGUN9.
So this was a couple weeks ago.
I love the way
you have
they
a comment, RFM?
Exactly, yeah, I love the way they said that they got the people on both sides. Some of them are saying it's unconstitutional, and the other people saying it's a really cool thing to do.
Exactly. I hear a little bit of an echo, Bill. Do you hear that? Is it just me?
It's you.
No, I think it's. I had to turn the sound off once we shared that screen, so it should be gone now. Sorry about that.
I love to hear the sound of my own voice. There it is. So, yeah, and how they say, this will benefit, well, some of the students and some of the parents. So, anyway, a very interesting scenario. People are kind of weighing in different ways, and the point here is that this was passed by the school board, a 5-member school board, and a lot of people didn't really know that this was happening. So there's been a follow-up article, if I can just read this on the slides. Again, this is just a little kind of a microcosm of how this all works. So it says Arizona School District could walk back the plan to build Mormon seminary at the high school. Because I don't think they've realized that there would be so much pushback when they just said, let's do this. This will be great. This is perfect. And again, this is a seminary building for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints built on school land. And we'll talk about a little bit later how it works in Utah and most places. It is never built on the school land. There are little workarounds. It's by the school, but it's not on school land, and that's the difference here. Right. So the key points are that the Vail School District could reconsider a decision, like I said, already made, to lease the land on a high school campus to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for a seminary building. The parents and community members expressed concerns about the separation of church and state, lack of transparency in the decision-making process, basically happened without anyone knowing, and the potential use of public funds. While the district maintains the agreement is legal and beneficial, Superintendent John Carruth, who we saw right there, acknowledged the community's frustration and pledged to revisit the issue at the school board. So what we saw was from a couple weeks ago where he's like, this is great. I think then he got a couple phone calls, and now he's like, yeah, we might want to look at this a little closer. So the article,
they might want to invite a constitutional lawyer to visit with the city council when they're talking about it.
Yes, exactly. And that group filed that suit, or that, intention to say that this is not separation of church and state. It says the building would be owned and operated by the district as a community room space, but the district entered into a 10-year lease agreement with the church, and there would be an option to extend for another 9.5 years. Now, I was thinking that's interesting. So the church can use it for 10 years, perhaps 19 years. And I think that probably takes you up to the second coming. So they're covered right there. I think that's probably what they're thinking.
And the church is probably footing the bill for the materials and labor, right?
Exactly. Yep. They're going to build it. And this is where it all gets a little complex, because on the surface you'd go, well, why not? That's nice. The church or the school is going to get this building that they'll be able to use in the coming decades.
But I think all of that is ultimately irrelevant.
It actually, I think it is. Yeah. And
none of that has anything to do with whether it's constitutional.
Exactly.
I think a more interesting question would be if they had sold that plot of ground to the church, even though it's carved out right next to the school, and then the church built on it.
And we'll get into that because that's kind of how they do it in Utah, some of the ways. So outside of the lease agreement, giving the church use between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays, the facility could be used for other school programs or community needs. So they would have some access to it. According to district documents, the church would also pay the district a monthly fee for rental, utility, and maintenance costs. So again, what's wrong with this, right? On the surface. So then it says, let's see, community concerns. Sorry, I'm reading through my notes here. Hold on a second. I've got so many pages this time.
Yes. Okay. And my answer for you while you're looking for it, Rebecca, when you say what's wrong with that is other than the Constitution and the First Amendment, nothing.
There you go. Nothing. Okay. Yep. Did I just read that? Okay. So it says, so this article talks about how a rural Arizona school board could revisit a decision to build the seminary for the church on a high school campus after the frustration and anger from parents boiled over at a listening session. So basically what happened is they passed it, and then, you're slapped with that organization that sent them kind of a cease and desist. You've got parents calling, and then they're like, okay, we'll have a listening session. Let's hear what the people have to say. But again, it's already been passed. The session on April 16th culminated in Vail School District Superintendent John Carruth, who we saw before, indicating he would take the community concerns to the district board, where they could decide if they kind of wanted to walk it back, right, as they listen to people.
So Rebecca, do you wonder if, like in Cody, once they've passed it, they can't go back and undo it?
See, and that's an issue too that they're going to have to revisit. Absolutely, because it is passed. So the superintendent says, as soon as we heard that there was concern, we opened up to the public and said, hey, come in, tell us what your concerns are. Not quite sure why that didn't happen before this decision was made. And if we need to walk a decision back, we will walk it back, he says. So they're definitely backpedaling. About 60 parents and residents filled in a room at the Vail School District office to voice their concerns about a contract between the district and the church, widely known as the Mormon Church. And again, it would permit this construction of the 1,300 square foot seminary on the campus. Now, it's interesting. There's a lot, I'm just kind of skimming the surface here. There's a lot of different concerns that are pretty valid. Here it says, retired teachers and residents and parents of students and former students said they felt enraged, frustrated, and disenfranchised with how the agreement with the church was carried out. The superintendent told them that while the agreement with the church had been signed, the district is functionally in a paused state moving forward. So they're definitely backpedaling and taking a break.
Oh, really? An agreement with the church has been signed. That sounds like a contract.
Yeah, it does sound like, I know. See, from the legal perspective, you're seeing this for what it is. So the community concerned about the separation of church and state. Now we're going to kind of get into what the people are saying. Most people who spoke at the meeting, the listening meeting, said they were concerned about the separation of church and state in the public schools. Retired teacher and librarian Diana Roche was one of those people. I'm not against the church at all. Where do we hear this over and over? It has nothing to do with that. It's this idea that it should not be on a school campus during school instruction time, she said. That's one of the concerns. And they went on to say in other parts of the article and some of the other ones that I read, they're concerned with who are these adults that are going to be there on campus? Who are these seminary teachers? Who vets them? You know, are they going to have access to our other students? Will there be missionaries that will be around the building that might be talking to students that, you know, aren't part of the seminary? All these are very valid concerns because you're bringing this building onto school property. And we all know that school property has very specific, you know, parameters, protecting the kids, who can be there, what kind of person can be there. So they're definitely concerned about, you know, leaders, missionaries. What is this exactly? They also, attendees said the decision lacked transparency and they worried it could cost taxpayers. Attendees asked the superintendent why the agreement was not brought before the public before the school board voted to execute the contract in March. If you had little breakout sessions about this little problem before it all erupted, we feel like 13 years of this has been planned behind our back. And now it is being snuck, the librarian said. And another part of the article did say they had been working on this for 13 years, just kind of, you know, in the background. And then
the answer is because they hope nobody would notice.
Exactly.
It's so naive. They thought they could sneak in an unconstitutional religious building on a state government property, public school, and everybody would just be okay with it. Nobody would really know. And it would be just a huge benefit and everybody would be happy. Yes, they've got to be Mormons.
I was just going to go to that. You always steal my thunder. Gosh darn it.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Someone was saying that in the live
chat. Logical conclusion. The superintendent went on to say that informal conversations in the foyers of church. No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say that. Informal conversations were happening off and on for 13 years, but there was no definitive plan to move forward until just about 7 or 8 months ago. Once the proposal moved forward, it was placed on the agenda for discussion at public meetings and posted on the district website. So he's saying there was some information about it, but it seems like it might have been, you know, who goes on, well, except for me, and reads agendas of city meetings and things like that. One of the parents said many in the community were not even aware of the agreement until she posted about it on Facebook. So now I did feel for that little kid that was, you know, on the video, because I agree. I had to get up for seminary at 5:30 in the morning. And I still don't think I've honestly recovered from that. Honestly, I reread my journals from that area because I did keep journals. And all I said is, I'm so tired. Every single entry starts out, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. I can't think straight. I can't even see. I can't. So I get this. But of course, the question that you ask, RFM, who was talking about this for so many years? Why this push? Why everyone's so excited? So we decided to look at the school board. There are 5 members of the school board. I was able to confirm that 2 of them are absolutely LDS, and a third probably is too. Whether or not that allegedly had any impact on this, I will leave anybody to make up their own mind. It obviously
did.
It couldn't hurt.
I would say that, and I tend to be trying to be careful. Obviously, this is Mormon from beginning to end. And 13 years ago, that's BS too. They're trying to give it some kind of a pedigree. Yeah, maybe somebody mentioned it offhand 13 years ago, and it was never brought up until, you know, last December, and then they hit the pedal on it and snuck it in under the radar.
Yeah.
It sure as hell didn't hurt, did it?
No, it did not hurt whatsoever. And so I was very curious, you know, how does seminary, because most of us in Utah, our kids went to a seminary building that was right next to their junior high or right next to the high school. So I realized that I wasn't really clear on how that happened. So I did a little quick research right before the newscast. And it says in Utah, and I think in other places, Idaho, probably, you know, Arizona, maybe every other place, the LDS Church typically purchases land near the school for seminary buildings through a combination of direct purchase and collaboration with the school district. And of course, my co-host Landon, who's very cynical, brought up, yeah, I'm pretty sure they're probably tipped off when a school's going in, hey, we got a nice parcel for you over here, or, you know, we'll make sure that there's a piece of it, because there is always a seminary building next to the school. So what direct purchase means is the church can purchase land directly from private individuals or businesses, you know, right next to the school, just like any other real estate transaction. A collaboration with the school board could mean that in some cases, the school board will acquire land and then sell a specific parcel to the church. And I think that's probably how it happens. New junior high going in Highland, Utah. Let's make sure we let the church know, here's a parcel you can acquire for your seminary building. This allows the church to establish a seminary building near the school without necessarily being directly on school property. And that is the difference here. This building is going directly on school property. So here is a survey or a petition that people can sign. I think people are just kind of starting to be made aware of this. And again, it's that church and state argument. So we will continue to follow this. Any thoughts on this bill or RFM? Again, these little things, it's small, but it's kind of a microcosm for a bigger method of operation, I find.
I think ultimately they can talk all day long about the benefits to the school and the benefits to the Mormon youth who are going sleep deprived.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line is, I think what it comes down to is who owns the property.
Yep.
Two things. One is, doesn't it work this way in Utah? Aren't there seminary buildings on public school grounds all over the place?
No, that's what I just read. They are on a private parcel next to the school.
In every instance, private parcel next to the school.
Yeah.
Yes, because otherwise, Bill, it would be against the Constitution.
Exactly. That's why this is unique. That's why this is unique. And that's why I had to look it up, because I thought, in fact, that picture that I have right here is of the seminary building that my kids went to. And it was right there, right next to the junior high. And I was like, how does this happen? And it looks like when buildings are being built, a parcel is offered to the church, or perhaps there's a private individual. Maybe it is the church, a shell company. But they always seem to be able to do it, but it's not built on the school property. That's what's different here.
I'm just noting that Utah schools work hand in hand
yes,
with the church in order to have seminary buildings at every school property. Again, not on the property, but okay, within 100 feet. And then I just wanted to note too, it's always been a pet peeve of mine for decades. I'll just voice it here so I can get it out for the first time ever. I'm deeply bothered by the church's use of the word seminary. Seminary, by definition, is college instruction for people to be priests or rabbis, and Mormonism uses it as a way to say that our members get trained and learn and informed, and really it's just brainwashing, programming, and indoctrination for the young people of the church. It in no way, shape, or form is seminary as defined by the way the world uses that word.
Well, even in the Mormon church, you have to graduate. You don't have to, but you should graduate from seminary in order to become an elder.
You should.
You should. Well, and
Indeed.
I was going to say, I've been studying the requirements for seminary graduation because they were pretty rigorous when, I guess you guys didn't do it because you joined when you were older, but I mean, you had to read that full book you were studying, the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the DNC, all kinds of scripture mastery. And in more recent years, there have been tests that you have to take. If you don't pass the test, you don't pass seminary. I've been kind of gathering this information, hopefully for an episode soon, but they have watered down those requirements. I mean, it's almost nothing now to graduate. Then it was a guided test with your teacher and all the other students sharing answers. I don't even think there is a test anymore. It's pretty crazy. It tells me that the students and even the parents were just saying, we don't have time for this, with how rigorous education is now. And so I kind of see, having had my kids in seminary as recently as 4 years ago, it's almost a mission prep factory. They really, really hammer that to the boys, especially, and to the girls. They have all kinds of activities geared around serving a mission. It's almost like a little factory to, get you out onto the mission. So, but I was going to mention one more thing before we move on to Bill's important story next. Do you remember, I think it was probably like a year ago on the newscast when I talked about untrained clergy going into public schools? There were different bills in different states that would allow an individual representing a religion to go into the school to kind of pick up the slack for a school counselor. And of course, almost the very same scenario here. Parents are like, what do you mean an untrained LDS person is going to go in and walk the halls and talk to my students, or an untrained evangelical? It didn't matter the religion. This reminds me of that. And I have to say, I don't know what kind of legislative body they were in front of, but it was the Church of Satan, and they are there to point out these discrepancies, these, incongruent things. And these people were dressed like you would think someone from the Church of Satan were dressed, all in black. And they were addressing the panel and they were saying, we love this idea for this bill. We have signed up for shifts all throughout the day. We are so excited to right there, be hand in glove with your students and being able to teach them and work with them, just to point out, you just can't have that. There has to be that separation of church and state, especially with the most vulnerable. And that goes back, I'm going to use the vector word again, to a vector, a conduit for indoctrination. And the most vulnerable are the young. And this is exactly what this is, putting a seminary building on campus. So anyway, that's my soapbox for that. But we'll continue watching this story because I think it is interesting and it represents maybe a bigger picture.